Hello and welcome to New Earth Lifestyles. I'm JaneE King, your host of the show. Straight ahead. I have with me today my friend Dorothy Morgan, Astrologer.
Hi.
Hi, Dorothy. I'm
Hi.
glad you're here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And before we get going, I wanted to say a nice thank you to Manchester TV for this lovely space that is here every week for access, public TV access, and to John Eric O'Neill especially for setting us up, our technical director. And so welcome. Manchester, New Hampshire, April, June.
We're in June, yes.
June, and being an astrologer, I'm sure you know that.
I do. Well, everybody knows the date. Well, maybe not everybody.
Not me.
Not at the moment.
June 6th, 5th, June 5th.
June 5th today.
See, I haven't had enough breathing.
Let's
Got to bring myself
centered.
back here and
Yes.
back down. That red, it just kind of like, whoa.
I got yellow. We could do that instead.
So welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful that you took me up on my offer to be here today.
I'm glad I'm here. I like doing things like this. It's always fun to share and explore.
Right, share and
Yes.
explore and see what's going on. So this is a
Yes.
show about giving the viewer, the audience, an opportunity to see new things that they may not see in everyday television.
Yeah.
And so astrology, though people may know more about what astrology is than other things, and then they may not. I was really hoping you could explain to us. I was reading on your website the Babylonian origins of astrology and
Yes.
astronomy. So I was wondering maybe you could
Yeah.
start off with some of that, and then we had talked about some questions. But how did
Yeah.
astrology really start?
Well, as far as we can tell, it did start in Babylonian times, so it's quite a few thousand years old. And as we were becoming smarter and were more settled in humanity, didn't have to worry, weren't so concerned with just survival. There were a few people that could start learning and being educated, and they noticed the stars and the planets. And if you pay attention to them and see them every day, every night, actually, because you can only see them at night, except for the sun and the moon, and those aren't planets; those are the luminaries in our solar system.
Oh, okay.
All right, we call them planets in astrology. We call them planets just for simplicity. But back to the Babylonian times, they followed the astrology, the astronomy. They followed the planets. They followed the constellations, and slowly, basically, it's just morphed into what it is today. But the astrology and the astronomy were one and the same, because things like the planets that are very close to us, Mercury and Venus and Mars, especially Mercury, and it's coming up to be in a retrograde motion. Now, you could see that. If you're out there every single night,
Really? You can see that?
they tracked it back in thousands of years ago. You could track those three planets especially to see that they were either moving forward or moving backwards. And it's just from our perspective here on Earth. They don't literally go backwards. But it is from our perspective here on Earth, these planets will go retrograde. And so the reason I'm mentioning that is that's happening really soon. It starts in a couple of days, another Mercury retrograde. But the thing is, and we can get into that if we get into it,
Yeah.
but the thing is, when the Babylonians and all these people were following the planets, what they did was they noticed what was going on in the world around them. And so the world was very limited. It's not like it is today. And so this is how the definitions of what the planets do came about. They would just look and see what is the human consciousness right now. And they didn't even say it that way. They just were like, well, when this does this, it just seems like all of the communications seem to go a little bit haywire. And that's Mercury retrograde. That's just that in a nutshell. There's way more to it than that. But in a nutshell, if you know anything about astrology, most people will hear that terminology.
Right. Oh my
Mercury
God,
retrograde.
Mercury's retrograde,
I
and
know.
blah, blah, blah.
And it's really not anything more than it ever is. It's this. It doesn't really cause anything to happen. Astrology doesn't cause anything to happen.
It doesn't.
No.
I always thought it did. I thought these planets doing whatever they do.
They are doing what they're
caused
doing.
this, but
They
it
don't
doesn't-
cause. It's about choice, conscious choice.
Oh, okay.
There are things and cycles in life, yes, and we can time it by the planets. And we do. And that's how we do a chart. That's how we'll do something like this. This is Jane's chart right here. And with Jane's chart, when she was born, and like when anybody's born, you come up with an astrology chart. And what it does is, let me drop that down just a little. There we go. It shows us where all the planets were at the time that a person was born.
So this is my birth chart.
That's your birth chart. So if somebody was out there in Babylonian times or even any time, you can see where these planets are if you're out there looking around.
If I'm out where?
Outside.
Outside at night.
Looking south.
You said out there, I was thinking I had to be out in the universe somewhere.
That would be fun too. I'm going to put this down now.
Okay.
But that's just the simple sample of what astrology chart looks like. We are the center of the universe as far as Western astrology is concerned.
Right.
So, which means everything goes around us, and we know it doesn't, but this is how we interpret it.
Right. Man thinks that we're the only one in the universe.
Well, yeah.
Has thought.
It's true, but we can only work on the planet, and we work on the planets that are really close to us, and again, in our solar system. Mm-hmm. And over the years, we've had things like Pluto be demoted. It's not a planet anymore.
Oh, I heard that. Poor
yeah, it was
Pluto.
a few years. I know. But you know what? He's still, we only discovered that planet in the 1930s. Oh.
So the big discovery, they had to add it to our solar system, and now they said it's not a big thing, and they take it away.
It's a planetoid. It's a planetoid. And then there's...
Planetoid.
So that's the science of it, which is... you can look that up, because I'm not going to explain that.
As opposed to a what?
A planet.
A toid. It's smaller than a planet.
You know what? I'm not even sure if it has to do with the size. But then there's this asteroid out there. It was an asteroid called Sirius. And it is out there. Let me see, where is it? It is, I think it's near Uranus. And it is an asteroid, but from the science that they've been working on, that is now a planetoid as well. So they've downgraded Pluto, upgraded this asteroid, which is not an asteroid. It is in orbit around our sun.
Oh, I see. That's what makes it a planetoid rather than an asteroid.
Yes, the asteroids... There are some asteroids that are in the asteroid belt, and they're huge, and the asteroid belt is out there between Mars and Jupiter, I think. Yes, between Mars and Jupiter, I do believe. And I know it's science.
Well, you're checking in to make sure that's the right answer.
I know I was. I think that's where it's at.
So I saw you go, whoo, yep. You kind of went out to the universe to check out.
I did. I had to go look at it. I did. You're right. That's exactly what I did. I looked at a picture of the solar system in my head, and it's like, okay. That's right. The asteroid belt is around.
So if there's a whole belt of asteroids, they don't really call those asteroids planetoids, but this one asteroid, it's not in the belt?
It's near it, but it's not in it.
Isn't that funny how they have to kind of linearize what they do and what they don't do?
And it truly is far from us, and so it's not easy to see these things or study these things, honestly. So we have to rely on the spaceships that we send out, and decades later, technology is... we just have to rely on what we rely on.
Exactly.
And that's the science
like
of
the
it.
Hubble telescope.
Exactly.
There was something they sent out to Mars.
Yes, I don't know, some rover of some kind, so that was kind of nice. So
it's nice for you guys because you get to get a little more information. I mean, astrologers, in fact,
It is, because, the physical information gives us information that we can interpret and bring it into our energy, bring it into the spiritualness of things in a way. Mm-hmm. And so with astrology, I mean, it is science and it's scientific. And this wheel is set up by all kinds of math. And I used to know it when I started 25 years ago. But
when you had to do it
when I had to do the math that way. We did not have computers then. Well, we did.
Imagine that 25 years ago.
Just 25 years ago. The computer software was not available for casting a chart, it's called.
Yeah, we had computers, but they were like the size of this room.
Yes, they were. If you didn't know. And the air conditioners.
Mainframes, they were called.
That's right, yeah. And the mainframe is like, my cell phone has more juice than that now.
Yeah, isn't it amazing where we've come?
Yes,
and
that's
all
technology.
Science, and a lot of it has to do with going to the moon and NASA and all the research that they've done.
Me too.
To create the space things, like the space station. And
a lot of people don't know this too, and it has nothing to do with astrology, but a lot of people don't realize, but when the military is doing whatever it does,
that's right.
Who knows what that is, A lot of technology comes from military use.
That's
but
true.
the really secret private stuff, eventually it shows up in the public sector. So
They want to make money,
that's right.
get their money back on
Yes.
what they spent on the defense system.
Possibly. So yes, astrology is ancient, and we used to be considered alchemists, astronomers, and astrologers, and all of that was one entity, one career, one profession. Not too many people
Really?
did that.
So astrologers were alchemists.
We were alchemists.
What are alchemists?
An alchemist is somebody who tries to take, the true definition is somebody who tries to take base metals and turn that into gold. And they really did. They were scientists, and they were chemists, so they were alchemists. But they also they did all of these things together. It was just, it all seemed to go together all the time. You were an astrologer as well. And then you would cast charts for wealthy people, the lords, the ladies, the kings, queens, whomever. And slowly, as the church arose and Christianity arose, and you could tell people or tell the king or the queen something and they didn't want to hear it, or it wasn't accurate 100%, and you would lose your head. So eventually you stopped saying that you were an astrologer.
Because you wanted to live a little longer.
I did want to live a little longer. I get a few past life regressions once in a while. I get a little tap into that once in a while.
Yeah,
And it's like, that's not good
I feel
energy.
headless. Feel my head just roll down the cobblestones.
Right. So it is ancient, very ancient art, an ancient practice. Again, the science of it and the math of it is what places all the planets around us. And it's what, if you saw the chart just a minute ago, it's what divides that chart, that astrology chart, into 12 sections, like a piece of pie. And each section is ruled by, in charge of, is every single zodiac sign, because there's 12 zodiac signs.
So I'm curious as to how they did it into 12s, because I would think it would be like denominations. Well, it is denominations of 4, I guess. It's 3 4s. But I was thinking of when you go 4 directions, then you go 8 directions. Oh, then you go 12 directions.
Yep.
But then from 8, you usually go to 16.
Yeah, at 8 is where, as far as the math in astrology goes, that's kind of where it stops, because we have, people know 4 moon cycles, but we actually have 8 moon cycles. And so we that's, to me, if you're going to look at the cycles.
Full moon, new moon, and then the moon's in between those
Right.
two. I see.
Yeah, the
So
first
there's
quarter,
8
second quarter,
of
so
them.
there's 8 of them altogether.
I see, that you talk
Yeah.
about in someone's chart.
Yeah, we can look at that, because we can see what type of a moon cycle a person is born under. So why would you even want to do this, Because,
Yeah.
it's not that it's going to, it can change your life if you want it to. You can use this as a tool.
Right. To know the tendencies.
Exactly. Because we're born with certain tendencies, and I can look at, like, this chart that we showed you of Jane, and we can see, okay, so she's a Virgo, and there's definitions of what a Virgo is. And what a Virgo is where the sun was on the day that she was born. And it was, if we look out into to the zodiac belt, which is all the way around the planet, and it's stationary around the planet.
Oh, it's stationary.
It
so
is
it doesn't
stationary.
Move.
It doesn't move with the constellations.
Oh, cool.
When astrology first started, that's why the lineup is different. When the astrology first started, it was lined up with the constellations. But the precession of the planet, and the precession of the planet is, again, more science.
The Earth planet.
The Earth planet, yes, it's the science of the spin. And it gets a little bit of a tilt, a 2% tilt, and eventually, so we're not quite in alignment with the constellations anymore.
Okay.
But the zodiac belts, the beginning of the astrology year is March 20th. It's always March 20th, and it's a certain point as to when the sun reaches a certain point.
I see. In the sky.
In the sky.
That day on the March 20th.
That's
it's
right.
Always March 20th.
Always March 20th.
Oh.
Always.
Wow.
That's the only one that really sticks to always. The rest of them can shift a little bit to the 21st, to the 22nd,
I was
to the
always
19th.
wondering why March was always that way.
Yes.
Because I like to celebrate the equinoxes.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
solstices, which are the Earth holidays. And I was
Exactly.
wondering why they were considering March, the vernal equinox, which is spring equinox, the new year.
Because that's the beginning of the zodiac.
Because the zodiac
The
begins.
zodiac begins on that day.
And the Babylonians figured that out?
They did. They did.
Because, why would that be the beginning?
I believe it is because it is the angle of the sun, and the sun it is the angle of the sun. Now, some people think that the beginning of the year is the winter.
Solstice.
The winter solstice, because the sun starts increasing.
Right.
And that is the beginning of the natural year, the Earth year, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Right.
Right?
When the sun goes from the least amount of sun and it starts growing in the sky.
It starts growing again.
Because of the tilt of the Earth and how the sun shines on the Earth.
That's correct.
At its tilt.
That's right.
But in March...
And from March 20th, it is when...
perfectly at the equator.
That's right.
The sun is shining directly, evenly in alignment with the equator.
That's right. And where it started is unknown.
Okay. So why wouldn't the fall equinox have something to do with that? That doesn't happen the same way?
It's
You don't know.
I don't know. It is
trying to pull it out of you.
Yeah.
It's just not there.
Nope.
Okay.
But it is set up with
Mystery.
the Earth. It is because when did it start? When did it start?
I know. It's like, when did life start? You can't really answer that one
Exactly. So it's hard to really draw. We can only go back, we only know astrology goes back to Babylonian times because somebody kept record, but that doesn't mean they didn't follow the planets even before then.
Right.
The Mayans had a great way. They studied the planets and understood the calendar in an incredibly intense and intricate way. I can't understand it at all.
Oh, you can't. So
I've tried to
you
understand.
Can't kind of put it against your astrology.
Somewhat, but it is not the same.
Really?
It is not the same. There's a few points that are the same, and that's those 4 major holidays in the year.
Okay.
The spring, summer, winter, and fall. Those cardinal points, they're called.
Okay.
Cardinal meaning it's initiating something new. That's what that cardinal energy is all about.
I see. That initiating something new.
Right, and those are the zodiac signs. Those are the first zodiac signs of each season. So Aries is spring.
Okay.
Cancer is summer. Oops, wait a minute. Aries is spring, that's right. Cancer is summer. Libra is fall, and Capricorn is winter. So those are the cardinal signs of the zodiac.
I see.
Yeah. And so
if somebody was born in those signs, what does that mean?
you know what?
Anything
They're
in
going to be
general?
somebody that's a little more, that will initiate action more than others.
Okay, those 4
All right?
signs.
Those 4 signs. But there's plenty of other things that can give that a little less or a little more of an influence. It really depends on other things as well. But in a general sense, it's very, very general. And so when you have that and those cardinal energies, the thing is there's 4 of them, and each one is a different element.
Right.
So they take action in 4 different ways.
So is Aries air?
Aries is fire.
Oh, interesting.
So they take action by taking action through passion.
through
through
Aries,
passion.
an
Aries.
person.
A person who would be a Cancer, or the zodiac sign of Cancer, is water. So their action is an emotional action.
And so that would be
All
the
right.
crab.
Yep.
And
All right, you got it.
Okay, then.
And Libra is air. It's the air sign.
Libra's air. Okay.
Libra is air, and so they take action through thought. They'll think about it first, and they'll figure out how they're going to make, or how they're going to change something, or how they're going to take action.
Okay.
And then Capricorn is earth. It's going to take its time. It's a little slower than the others because Capricorn is a cardinal sign. It's about taking action, but it's an earth sign, so it's going to do it in a very grounded way, very slow, very methodical, but very, very structured oriented as well.
Interesting.
I know.
It's interesting how you can find these generalities, and I'm sure if any of you out there were any of those 4 signs, you kind of say, oh, yeah, I am like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm a Virgo, and that's an earth sign.
It is an earth sign. And when you were born, that means we couldn't see because you were born before sunrise. And there's a line that goes straight across this chart, if you noticed it. And that's the east and west horizon. That's the horizon. So at the time that you were born, all of these planets for you were underneath the horizon. So it was dark. So
Dark.
we couldn't see any of these.
Wow. And what
Yeah.
does that, because I know that, I think I was born at 3:30 in the morning. Well, that's what I put
It says around 3.
3
Yep.
3 o'clock. Okay, yeah. So that's pretty dark, about as dark as you can get.
It's pretty close to being dark, especially in September.
Right.
So with most of your planets, with the exception of 2 planets, everything was below the horizon. Now here's another generalization, and this is way we would look at this too. Especially if somebody's learning astrology, you're going to learn these things, these general things, and you get to the details some other day.
Which brings me to the point, you're teaching something tonight, right?
I am. I have a study group over in Wells, Maine that I teach.
Cool.
And I teach another one in Elliott, Maine, and I teach one down in Andover, Massachusetts.
Circles of Wisdom, my favorite
Circles
store.
of Wisdom, yes. So all that's on my website.
Yep.
And so with everything being below the horizon, most everything, what this does is this makes you a person, generally speaking, that you're very private. Now, I know you're out here and you're on a public television, but the biggest preference is to be private.
Right.
That's your preference.
That is my preference.
And then then you have a fair amount of stuff in the first four houses out of 5 is most of your stuff. And what that tells us, because that's divided into 3 different sections, the first 4, the second 4, the third 4. You have more of it in the first 4, and that means that you have more of an interest in doing what is important for your own spiritual growth. That is your major process in life. So to be home and private and to do what's important for you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't bring things out into the world, because you will. But it has to happen for you in here first. Very quiet, very private, your spiritual growth.
It does, and that's how it is in my life.
Yeah.
And then right now I'm kind of blooming into this, coming out and teaching everyone what I've been learning all my life.
Yeah.
For the last 20 years anyway.
Yeah, because the planet Uranus, where it is today in comparison to when you were born, is near the very, very top of your chart. All right? So it's called the midheaven. That's the name for it. Uranus is the planet. His symbol is this, but where he is today is right up in this area.
Today.
Okay?
Okay, so today he'd be, if you did a chart for me today, looking at today, he'd be at the top of my chart, which is way up in the sky.
Which is the most visible point in the astrology chart of a person.
Oh, okay.
Is called the midheaven. It's the beginning of the 10th house, so it's called the 10th house cusp. We'll give you a little astrology lesson here. It's called the cusp, the beginning of every house. But when that point in somebody's chart is triggered by anything, honestly.
What do you mean by triggered?
Triggered, that means there's a planet going over that number in the zodiac.
Okay.
All right? It's a planet going near there. And
Okay.
that's what's happening for you. Uranus is slow, so it's going to take its time. Uranus wants you to do something that's social. It wants you to do something that's best for what's good for humanity. How do I want to share what I know? I can do this out in the public.
So that's why I'm on TV?
That's why
because
you're
of
on
Uranus.
TV. I know.
Oh, right. That's a good reason.
There is a very good reason. He wants you to do
Wow.
this. He wants you to enlighten people, inspire people.
How amazing that you can see that in my chart.
I could see that in your chart. And that's one of the reasons why you would have a chart reading. Well, you would even want to know about what's going on in your chart.
Because it confirms. For me, that's so confirming that it's saying, yes, do this.
Yes.
That's what it's
I
saying.
think,
to me.
and if you were to ask me what, that is the number one thing that I hear from people when they have a session.
It's
Especially if they've
confirming.
never had it, is that, wow, that's very confirming that
Yeah.
this is what I've been doing. And I don't know these people. So for a stranger to tell them, here's the influences of what's going on right now. You can choose to use these things or not. You're doing this without having any knowledge of what was going on. So
Right.
again, it's very confirming, but you
Yeah.
didn't need me to tell you this.
No, but it's enlightening to know that
is.
Uranus is up there telling me to do this.
It's giving you options. It's giving you options on how to work with what is available. You know,
And because it is an option and it's a choice.
it always is. And I mean, I know that, and
Some
there
people
are.
might be fighting against this and causing themselves to bang their head against the wall.
This
or
is
something,
true, and
instead
and
of just stepping forward and saying, okay.
that's one of the things that I like to work with people on. So when you just interpret, when I would interpret like this chart, and I would go through and interpret the whole thing with the person, their birth chart and what it means. And it really is important that you know what time you're born to get the exactness of it, the exact time that you're born. You know, within a few minutes.
So ask your mother.
Ask your mother.
She's
Look on
the one
your
that
birth
would know.
certificates. Sometimes
Hopefully.
they don't know.
That's
I get
true.
my 2 children mixed up all the time. I know, go figure, right?
You'd think my mother had 7 of us, but she seemed to know when I asked her a long time ago.
Excellent. So, besides that, there's the moon sign, and each planet is going to be in a zodiac sign. because there's 360 degrees in this wheel. There's 360 degrees in every circle. That's geometry, if you ever remember that from school. All right?
Right.
So everything, the minute you take that first breath, the time that you're born, it's like the planets and their energies, they come into us, and we incorporate them, and we're born. And then we have things to work on. Because we're all here for some reason. We're here to learn something. We're here to learn things. And sometimes things are hard to learn, but they're the best learned lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're easy. And if there's too much easy stuff in somebody's chart, they're lazy. And they don't learn a lot. But you know what? Sometimes
they don't have to, I guess.
They don't have to.
They're in a lifetime of being lazy.
I call it a timeout lifetime.
A timeout. So.
I do. I do. My mom's got one of those.
Does she?
She
Oh,
does.
cool.
Life is not. It's fine for her, but it's nothing major difficult.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just had a thought. I don't know how morbid this might sound, but because my parents have both passed away, is there any way to see in your chart when you're going to be passing?
Sometimes, yes. Mm-hmm. But the key with that is you have to realize is that death is just another transit. It's called a transit. So
Okay.
when I was saying that Uranus is moving through the top of your chart, that's called a transit. It's transiting, it means it's moving,
Okay.
just like bus transits, okay? Just like that. It means
Okay.
it's moving from one point to another. All the planets are constantly out there moving as we are. But this is a fixed point in time, your astrology chart. So yes, there is a part of the astrology chart that is about death and dying, and there's a part about your health. And so it is easier for myself to see in somebody's chart, not necessarily how they're going to pass away, but if somebody close to them is.
Oh, really?
I've helped a lot of women with husbands who are passing. And actually just recently somebody, just 2 days ago, her husband passed. And
Ooh.
we talked a couple days before that. And it's like, okay, so let's get ready for this.
And how do you help them? What do you do for it?
Well, there's only so much you can help, obviously. I mean, if you know your spouse isn't going to survive because they have a condition of some sort,
Right.
how do you help them? It's just,
listening? Or?
yeah, I think that's more than anything, just listening. And they hear that the potential for, the spouse passing is there. And it really comes through material things we see that are material.
Like, what do you mean?
Inheritances,
What comes through?
insurance. I can see
That in the chart?
I could see that easier in a
ah.
chart than I can see you dying. I can see easier in a chart.
Inheritance coming up, or some type of a change like that.
A major change in the relationship part of the chart, or the planet that's in charge of your relationships. That's a little bit different for everybody, but
Is there anything in my chart around when I might find a long-time relationship?
It's
That's probably another question you get a
it
lot.
is. It is something I get a lot, and I would like to put the planets all the way around it. I know where that one is, but there are many different ways to look at the chart to see that, and it's not just the planets. So
Okay.
it's difficult to do it this way. But when Uranus does make a trigger to the angle, that's the south point, which is that midheaven for you, when it makes that trigger to that, it will trigger the 7th house, which is the relationship part of the chart. And
Okay.
Aquarius for you is in charge of your relationships.
Aquarius.
Yes. Aquarius is in charge of your relationships because it's on your 7th house cusp, the beginning of your 7th house, which is right there.
Oh, okay. And that's Aquarius
And the planet
right
that's
there.
in charge of Aquarius is Uranus.
Oh my gosh.
So it's making
It's all happening right now.
it's making a connection. Yeah, it's making a
Wow.
connection. But I want to see other things too, and that's other math, and that would be my software would help me put those different charts up. So
I see. Well, it's just good to know. I didn't really understand, because I haven't looked at this since I had it done way back whenever it was.
yeah,
I don't even remember when I had this done.
you have to look at
In Springfield.
2007.
2007. So that was
That was
7
ages
years
ago.
ago.
Yeah. That was
So
a
I
long
can't remember
time
what was
ago.
said to me then, so that's why
No,
I brought it today.
that's quite
A
all
little
right. That's-
review. And
it
so
is.
knowing that Aquarius rules my seventh
Seventh
house,
house.
which is my relationships,
Yeah.
the dawning of Aquarius.
Yes. Yes. And that also means that you're going to want somebody who's different and unique.
Oh, yes.
And somebody who's really not mainstream, because Aquarius is never mainstream, ever.
It's
It's not. Aquarius is not a mainstream person at all. So they like things that are a little bit different. So, and so that's the type of partner you'd be looking for. Somebody who is different and unique. And
yes. That's
somebody who can be worldly. I mean, still be private, but worldly as well.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very important.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're out there. No. What else can we... I had a question about, about you. We've been talking a lot about astrology, and I'm always curious on this show to get in touch with how you came to be an astrologer.
I know, it's different. Well, it's always a different thing. Astrology, and I have a lot of students, so, gosh, I teach so many different classes, so to hardly anybody goes past a couple of years of study. So that is, so that
how long have you been studying?
Over 25 years. I think it's 27
years.
now.
So yeah, once you get into this, you never stop because you're always learning more about the planets and astrology and science.
Yeah, it never stops. I mean, I'm still, and I there's so many different types of astrology and different ways to look at the astrology chart, and I still stick with really things that are considered very basic, and I'm still learning. Always going to keep learning.
Yep.
So the story is, back when I was having my first Saturn returns. Every planet will come around and make a return trip to where it was on the day that you were born. Not all planets make it all the way around because they're really slow. But when Saturn comes all the way around, that's usually around 28 years of age. Right around 28.
That's what I've heard. Okay.
And then the second hit is right around 56, 57. All right. So when I had my first Saturn return, I was married. I was married to the Air Force, so I was out in New Mexico. I was young, had two young children, and he got out of the military. We came home. We were out west. We came back to New Hampshire, to Portsmouth. My family for years have had flower shop in Kittery, Maine. Oh. And so I was a florist for all those years too. And so I went back to the flower shop to start working. And there was a lady there. Her name was Kim Rogers Gallagher, and she was my very first teacher. And she goes, well, what are you? Oh, I'm a Gemini. Okay. And she goes, well, give me your birth stuff. And then the next day she came in, and she told me so many things about myself. It's like, oh, my God, how does anybody know this? I need to figure this out, because Gemini, we're really inquisitive. Very, very analytical, and I want to know. I wanted to know. So right then and there, that day, I was hooked. That was it. Started taking lessons from her, and I just reconnected. She's down in Florida. I'm going to go see her next month.
Wow,
I can't wait.
How cool is that?
I know. It's been a few years, so it'll be good.
Getting back in touch with your original teacher.
I know, it is. And she's like, wow, and it's good. So we're all on Facebook, too. You can find us there. And, yeah, it's so that's how I started it. And that really is simple, but it's...
and you never know who's going to walk into your life and change it by doing one little thing like your chart.
I know, it really is.
I think that's when Ram Dass talked about who he was. Richard Alpert was his real name at Harvard.
Okay.
He started out in Harvard as a psychiatrist, and he was and Timothy Leary was his office next to him, and all this whole group. But that's when they were experimenting with LSD and how it took you to. Their goal was to connect with God.
Yeah.
And when he went to India and connected with his guru for the first time, and this guru, this Indian yogi, told him his life story without ever knowing him. So it's very similar to that. He told him his life story, and Richard Alpert stayed, and he became Ram Dass, and wrote his book, Be Here Now, and it's all history from there. But it started the same way, very similar, of someone seeing you and not knowing you anything about you other than one piece, which is for you your astrology stuff.
Yeah, it is, because there's just so much, because we've, I believe in past lives. So, for me, you don't have to believe in that to be an astrologer by any means. You don't.
No.
But I do. And so when I see patterns and I see certain things in a person's chart, I see the energy of something we've brought with us, we've brought from previous incarnations, and that we want to learn, and things that we make it a little tough on ourselves to learn, and to do that, just because the harder learned lessons are the ones that are learned. And
they stay with us.
They stay with us. I mean, and it's great to have good things come, and that doesn't mean you can't have great things happen. But I can see karmic patterns in astrology chart. I can see personal characteristics. And when you're born with something, I have many people say, when you're born with something, it's like, so I'm going to be stuck with that the rest of my life. They get kind of rude about it sometimes, and it's like, no, that's not the truth. The truth is, as soon as you realize something about yourself, you can say, okay, well, that's who I am. Well, how do I want to use this now? I don't have to be short-tempered.
Right.
Or I don't have to be short-tempered or negative or a jerk about stuff just because, well, the astrologer said that, I've got Mercury and Uranus square, so I'm always going to speak my truth. And if I'm going to be a jerk, I'm going to be a jerk because that's what I do. And it's like, no, let's make this better than maybe what you do until you realize this is what you're doing. Now, how can we work with this? This is my job. How can we work with this? What you can do with something like that is just to become somebody who writes poetry or writes, little haikus, stuff that's really just quick, short, fast, good information. Start just really putting different type of information out there. Be aware that you have a sharp tongue. Use it when you need to. I'm not saying to never depress yourself, but
Put it to good use.
Put it to good use.
A use that is constructive.
Yes,
perhaps.
absolutely. And so that's how I see some of the harder aspects in an astrology chart. There are certain things that will be difficult in everybody's life. We all have our own crosses to bear, so to speak. And so what do you do with it? You learn to carry it and work with it. And once you work it, you can move through that energy. It's always part of you.
Right, and so rather than looking at it as being stuck with it, you can look at it as this is your teaching tool.
Absolutely.
To learn who you are and how to enjoy life with that rather than fighting against it or wishing it wasn't there. Once you know it's always going to be there, you can form a different relationship with yourself, that's what it is. It's yourself.
Exactly. I know when I first started astrology, and I'll use my chart because I know mine very well, Mercury is the planet of communication. And for me, it is in an opposition to Saturn. And Saturn is about restrictions at times, but it's also, it's the Lord of Karma. And so, and it's, that's a little bit of an affliction on how I can communicate. So as a child, I was born in 1960. So, you were, children were to be seen, not heard.
Right.
So right away, from childhood all the way through childhood, I was not allowed to talk. I mean, you could talk, but be quiet. You're not heard, and that is the definition of Saturn.
Listen to you. You don't have any value.
No voice. You have no voice. And I'm a Gemini. Geminis talk a lot. Okay, they should listen a lot too, but they talk a lot as well.
Right.
The thing is, with Mercury and Saturn in an opposition, that is a restriction to communication. And as a beginner astrologer, I saw that, and I'm like, wow. And I'm shy. I'm never going to talk very much. I'm never going to teach. I'm not going to do any of those things because I took the book definition of what Mercury and Saturn are about when they're in that connection to each other, and I went with it. And then after probably 10 years or so, 10 or 12 years of studying, I realized it's like, all right, well, maybe I can teach. Maybe. And eventually, which was only 7 years ago, so it took me almost 20 years to become a teacher of astrology.
Wow.
I know. And Circles of Wisdom was my very first opportunity.
Nice. I love Kathy. She's so beautiful. You should go to Circles of Wisdom in Andover, Mass. It's a great store.
It is a wonderful place. And so I've been there for 7 years in July, and that's when I started really getting into, I was so shy, I couldn't even talk in a group. When I took some metaphysics, I took some psychic classes there as I was being an astrologer, and I was just being an astrologer. And I took some of those psychic classes, and just speaking up in the group of people was like, oh my God, scary. I felt like I was going to throw up. I was so nervous. But I slowly started saying, okay, I got to push the envelope. And I got to the point where now, all right, so I have the education I need, Saturn. I have the structure I needed under me, which was support and people saying, this is, this, do it. Mm-hmm. It's just my own self. I knew it. I could have done it probably 15 years, but I wasn't ready.
Yeah, you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready. So that Saturn and that Mercury, even as a person who knew astrology, I was still restricting myself.
Right, and so you're good at a good model for how to take how you were restricting yourself and then move into who you really want to be and who
Yeah.
you truly are and let it bloom and
It
still
is.
have that in your chart.
And Saturn is the teacher.
Saturn is a teacher. Where's my Saturn?
Your Saturn is right with your sun. Your sun and Saturn are connected.
What does that mean?
And that means that you are a teacher. You're a born
Oh.
teacher.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
But the thing is and you can do it out in public when you choose to do that. But mainly what it starts off as is that you're a teacher by example. Because Virgo is all about my daily routine and how I incorporate who I am in my daily life and my daily routine. So for you to be basically living is a spiritual practice
That's
for
true.
Virgo. I know
Wow.
it is.
You know it
I know it is.
Well, I'm living that. I strive for that anyway.
Yes. And that is where you are the teacher.
I see.
And
by
I know
living
you
my
teach,
life.
and I know you teach classes here and there, and
I
you,
do.
you do that as well. But the main teacher, the main part of you being a teacher is through your life, your
Oh,
daily
wow.
life, and your
Isn't
example.
That cool. That is so cool. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
I love
my
that.
desire.
And then
what
it
I'm
connects, and it even connects to basically it's called a conjunction. Your Saturn is conjunct with the Sun and conjunct with Mercury in your chart, and Mercury again, that's communication. So
So
you
that
speak. You can speak that. You can when you feel comfortable enough
Mm-hmm.
about what you know, you can talk about it.
great. That's basically what I'm doing here.
Yes.
It's fun.
I
I'm
know.
so grateful.
I am too. It's like it can. I mean, to me, this is. I strive for this. This is who I am and what I want to do, and it's hard. You know, sometimes it's not always good to identify that much because that's a little more egotistical than some religions and beliefs like. But
What, saying you're doing what
identify,
you love to do?
yeah. Well, no, identifying that this is my job because if somebody took this away from me, I guess I wouldn't not exist, but
You would not be happy.
I wouldn't be happy.
Interesting.
But I love what I do, and anytime I go and try and get a regular job, it just doesn't work out.
Doesn't work out.
Yep.
So maybe if there's a caller on hold,
Okay,
let me see.
how do you do that?
Hello, you're on the air. Hello. I guess maybe I didn't see that.
It says enter number.
No. Hello. Yep. I'm sorry, didn't see the sign up there. He probably was on hold for a while.
Oh, no, that just came up.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was only up for a
Sorry,
second.
if you
Call back,
call
because
back,
Jane
yeah.
just hung up on you.
sorry about that. I gotta
that's
get
funny.
the swing of things. So, yeah. So very interesting. So
know.
this is what you do, and I love it because she can just look at. So this is the chart. We'll hold it up again. Okay. Hello, this is New Earth Lifestyles. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you? And what is your name, please?
My name is Donna.
Hi, Donna. How can we help you today?
I'd like to know where my Saturn is.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, you know what? I would have to have my astrology software open, and I don't have that open. I
Oh.
don't have that up.
And Donna, what is your sign? Your zodiac.
Taurus.
Oh, you're a Taurus. I can give you a little bit about Taurus. Taurus is, I can give you a little bit about Taurus. What I would have to do is I would have to look up your birthday, and I don't have that with me today. I'm sorry. I didn't bring that. But being a Taurus, that is very earthy, very grounded. It's a fixed sign, and it is an earth sign. And that is the most, well, not necessarily the most fixed, but you guys are slow to move, slow to make choices. But when you do, you know you've made a good choice. How's that sound?
That sounds good. I like making good choices.
Yes. Do you take your time making choices?
Yes, I do.
All right. Very good. What is your profession? What do you like to do? Actually, that might be two different things.
I like different things. I like to do crafts, make things, pillows, blankets.
Beautiful things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. How about your cooking skills? Do you like to cook?
Oh, yes, I like to cook.
Taurus loves to eat. It's one of those comforts that Taurus loves. They love rich food, good food. They love eating. So that's something that a lot of Taurus people have to be careful of, because overindulging sometimes is a Taurus trait. At times, not always, but at times.
Right, right.
Yeah, and beautiful things.
I love that Italian food.
Yeah, yummy. All good pasta. It is. It's wonderful. But I'm sorry, I can't tell you where your Saturn is without having to get out the software and look it up. But
So, Donna, if you want to go online, you could check out Dorothy's website. It's Dorothy Morgan, or no, it's New Hampshire Astrologer.
yes, it's nhastrologer.com. So you can contact me through there, because there's a little contact tab there, and you can say you talk to me on here, and I can get that information to you by email. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Donna.
You're welcome. Thank you, Donna. Yes.
Cool.
So to have the software up would be fine. If I had a book, it's called an ephemeris. If I had that, I could have looked that day up, but I still wouldn't know where it was without knowing what time a person is born and
Right.
setting it up. Because this wheel just goes, it twists at every minute. It's like a clock ticking.
I see.
So the planets move into different sectors. So for you, with your Sun and Saturn connected, it's called a conjunction. I gave you the definition of that already.
Right.
And it's in your second house, which naturally was in charge, Taurus is in charge of. So that would tell me, too, that you have a very earthy, your living environment is probably very earthy, very grounding. Not lacy frou-frou,
No.
just really earthy, because
I
Taurus
live
is
in a wooden
earthy.
teepee.
Do you?
My house where I live is the eaves. It's the L of a barn.
Okay.
It's been an apartment, and,
Yes.
and everything's an eave, so I call it my teepee.
Awesome. Oh,
It's
I
all
love
wood.
that.
Pretty
I
much.
love
There's
that.
very few flat walls. So I don't know
beautiful.
if we could show this again, maybe, to help people to see what a chart looks like. And maybe you can just point out, Dorothy, where the
There you go.
where you saw Saturn and the Sun together.
Yes, it's right there. That's
Okay.
the symbol for Saturn and the Sun right there. And that sector is the sector called the second house,
The second house, which rules.
which Taurus is naturally in charge of that. In your chart, it looks like Leo is in charge. Leo and Virgo are in that sector.
I
So in
see.
the astrology of things, and the way astrology is so layered and complicated, we look at the second house here, and we see that Taurus is in charge there, so we understand that this Taurus information, which is earthy and grounding, is what I value, my skills and talents and things that I love to do. Now, Leo is there, and so is Virgo, so you have to add those 3 bits of energy as well.
Right.
So it makes things a little complicated. That's the hard part with learning the astrology. It's just, it gets complicated because
Always extra things
there's
get in
always
there.
extra things that get layered. It's like a layer cake. There's the basic information that you start with. That's always in charge. And then what's in charge? What
Right
do
now in this
you
moment.
have in charge for you?
Right. Okay.
And then what's going through there at this moment? That's like 1, 2, 3 layers and more.
I see.
So you have to do that.
Okay, we have another caller coming in.
All right.
Hello, this is New Earth Lifestyles. You're on the air.
Hey, what happens when science comes out with new discoveries as far as planets not being a planet, like Pluto?
Can we have your name, please?
My name's Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I'm a Capricorn.
Hi, Chris.
Chris the Capricorn.
Well, yeah, because he wants to know what the rules are.
Right.
What happens is Pluto is still going to be Pluto. We're still going to, as an astrologer, I will still use the information of what Pluto is about. So when Pluto was discovered, we looked around, and not me, but other astrologers in the 30s, they looked around and they said, what's going on in the world right now? And it was all about major shifts and transformation, because it was actually, we discovered Pluto when the atom was being split, and then the atom bomb was being was being made. So in that time frame, so the planet Pluto or planetoid Pluto, doesn't matter whether it's upgraded, downgraded, that does not matter, because what it really comes down to is the energy and the vibration that it's been assigned. And it has this a spiritual energy to it, and then a metaphysical energy, and that manifests into physical properties and physical happenings. Now, we have 9 planets in our solar system and 12 zodiac signs. So some of these planets are doing double duty. And we're slowly going to end up with 12 planets in our solar system is really what it will come down to.
Oh, really?
Because I mentioned earlier Ceres, or Ceres, I think they call it, Ceres. Ceres was an asteroid, right? And it's been upgraded to a planetoid. So it's equal to Pluto. Now, the planet Mercury is in charge of Gemini and Virgo. Everything about the energy of Ceres represents what Virgo is, the harvest.
Really?
So your ruling planet, at some point, once the astrologers get out of the we're not changing our minds, Ceres most likely will be in charge of Virgo as opposed to Mercury doing double duty.
Really? How does that help this Capricorn Chris?
It doesn't help Chris at all, no. Chris, what happens, you know what, and I want everybody to know that as well. Yes, your sun is in the sign of Capricorn, and that gives you, you can look that up and read off a whole list of what Capricorn's about. But, again, right now there's 8 other planets in your zodiac chart, in your astrology chart, and they influence you too. They give us a little bit of taste of everything. So everybody is a little bit of every zodiac sign.
Right. And
Everybody.
So the science, Chris, does that help you a little bit?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
And you answered it very well.
Yeah, and once in a while, out in our zodiac belt, and the reason we have the constellations where they're at in the zodiac belt where it is, because around the planet it goes at an angle. It kind of like follows the equator at that. It follows the elliptic, right?
Okay.
Now there's a 13th one, and I cannot pronounce it to save my life, but it begins with an O, and it's this in Greek mythology, this huge man is wrestling a snake.
It's not
No.
Osiris.
Not quite.
Okay.
It's huge, or something or other.
Okay.
I've never been able to pronounce it. Sorry. Every once in a while, somebody from Huffington Post, and that really is where it comes from. They pick up an old article about that constellation. Yes, they do. They're great, and then they're not so great because they just take a little bit of truth and they blow it up, and it causes problems. And this was a couple of years back, and it will happen again in another couple of years.
Causes problems with the science community?
With the astrology, because they say, there's 13 zodiac signs, so now there's 13 zodiac signs because there's 13 constellations. And it's like, no.
Oh, it's still
Because
12.
this one is still 12. Because this one is below our elliptic. There's only one star in that constellation that is actually in the zodiac belt. It's near Sagittarius.
Okay, so this is the zodiac sign is actually a belt of stars around the Earth in our galaxy?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, from our perspective.
From our perspective.
Yeah.
It has to be in our galaxy because we can't.
Well, as far as we can see, yeah.
Unless it's some really huge thing outside
Right.
of our galaxy.
Right, exactly.